So hey there, my name is Brent Smith and I'm the Common Constitutionalist, and you're watching the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. And I got my crutch and my knee brace. You don't need to see my knee brace. I blew out my knee first part of last week, and it's no fun. It's just no fun being injured. And my children have reminded me, everybody I know has reminded me, hey look, this just proves it, you're not invincible. You're not Superman, you big dope. So, I also had a revelation that I really suck as a patient. I'm a bad patient. I always try to do everything for myself. I always try to do everything for everyone else. And it's having people take care of you while you're sitting like a blank and invalid, no fun at all. So today we got 2 or 3 topics. The first one is George H.W. Bush, who passed, I think, yesterday. Second is pornography in prisons, and the third is California voting laws. It's very interesting. I don't know if I'm going to get to all 3. Depends on how much my leg is throbbing by the time I'm done with this. I'm actually leaning against Santa's sleigh here, so I'm hoping that'll give me some Christmas inspiration. So I'll be right back, and that's what we'll be discussing today on the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. Yeah, baby. You're watching the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. Welcome back. Santa, give me strength. Santa's sleigh, give me strength. Give me the will to go on with my bad knee. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, rest in peace, George H.W. Bush. This guy's, he had a full life, fuller than most, we'll just say that. On his 18th birthday, George H.W. Bush enlisted in the military, and he served in the U.S. Navy. There you go, fellow squid. Woo! In World War II. 3 days shy of his 19th birthday, he became the youngest pilot ever in the Navy when he received his wings and eventually flew 58 combat missions during World War II. At the age of 20, in September 1944, his plane was shot down in the Pacific. He was taking part in bombing raids over Chichijima, tiny island 700 miles south of Tokyo, and was the only dig this, he was the only airman who was able to evade capture by the Japanese. So he was rescued. I can't remember the ship that found him. At any rate, he had a remarkably accomplished career. Ambassador to the UN, chairman of the RNC, CIA director, and obviously he ascended to the #1 spot, presidency. He was vice president to Ronald Reagan for 8 years, and then he ascended to the presidency in 1988. And he became probably more popular than I know of than almost any president. He became wildly popular after driving Saddam Hussein, who invaded Kuwait, after driving him out of Kuwait. And I think during or right after Desert Storm, his approval rating was like 91% overall. It's absolutely incredible. So, but still, I didn't care for his politics, and I didn't care for his political and world view. That I made clear on a number of occasions over the years or decades, whatever. However, at the end of the day, really none of this crap, none of that career crap, and none of the political stuff, and none of the worldview stuff matters a hill of beans. It really just doesn't. Not the no broken new taxes pledge, or the worldview, or the fact that he didn't go after Saddam Hussein, and lots of people said that he should have, and blah 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 blah, or his kinder, gentler stuff, or whatever the crap. All right. The reason is because by all account and by his own demonstration, for want of a better term, George Bush was just a very good guy. He was a good man. He was a good father, and he was a great husband to his wife of like 73 years, Barbara Bush. He was married to her for 73 years and just loved her so deeply. And like I said, he was just a good guy. He was kind and generous, and also had a pretty pretty good sense of humor from what I understand. He personally, this is demonstrating what he used to do because he was just a good guy, not because he was president. There wasn't anything obligatory about it. This is just what good guys do. He personally handwrote countless thank you notes. I mean, like hundreds or thousands of thank you notes to staff and friends and things like that for just over the littlest things when he was president. He took time out of his day to handwrite thank you notes. Yeah, and you know how presidents during the Christmas holiday, they always take a vacation or they always leave town and whatnot. Him and Barbara, during their tenure there, never left town, not once. They stayed in D.C. for every Christmas, and the reason is because his aides and his Secret Service people, the people protecting him, so they could go home and be with their families, and they wouldn't have to worry about guarding George Bush on vacation or, you know, whatever, like so many other presidents, like almost every other president does. The Secret Service has to follow them so they don't have a Christmas. Aides, advanced people, all that stuff, all this logistical stuff has to be done. And if it's over Christmas holidays, all these people are missing Christmas because of their jobs. And George H.W. Bush took that into account, and I think that that was great. There aren't many days, in my opinion, there aren't many these days who you can look at and say, you know, there's a guy that gets a free pass to heaven. And there's no waiting in line, there's no nothing. It just says, George H.W. here, okay. They knock yourself out, you're in, okay? And so he was just one of those rare exceptions. Like I said, I didn't agree with him politically, but everybody has to agree that this guy was just a fabulous individual. And so now he gets to go to the front of the line, and no doubt that he's already well on his way, if not with his loving wife in heaven, and that's just terrific. There's no better place to be. I was going to say no better place on earth to be, but you know what I mean. So that's my tribute to George H.W. Bush, just a good guy. And if that's what you can say to sum up someone's life, is that he was a good guy, that's not bad. And we're going to take a quick break. I'll be right back.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist video podcast.
Yeah, baby!
All right, I am back. I'm doing okay, I think, all things considered. Gonna have to get off of my foot probably, or off of my knee or leg or whatever for the balance of the day because of this, but c'est la vie. Santa, help me, Santa. Okay, I'm good. Next segment. Is looking at porn in prison a constitutional right? I know that it's always bothered me about that. I've often pondered that whether looking at pornographic photographs and whatnot in prison, the inmates, whether that's a constitutional right or not. It's just, you know, it's one of those things that you just always ponder. So this is from the Daily Mail, UK Daily Mail. 58 inmates are suing state officials claiming their constitutional rights have been violated after a pornography ban was introduced in Iowa's prisons. Yeah, buddy. Only 58? What the heck's up with that, man? The new it's so silly. The new legislation has been approved. I guess unless you're an inmate that likes to look at pornography, then it's deadly serious. The new legislation has been approved by the Iowa House and Senate and signed by Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds. It states that funds given to the Iowa Department of Corrections will not be used to make available any commercially published material to an inmate that are sexually explicit or contain nudity, as reported by the Des Moines Register. What if it's a privately funded thing, you know, commercially published? What if it's not commercially published? It's like a whole movie. Is that okay? I don't know. So anyway, it reverses policies that had been in place for 3 decades. Isn't that wonderful? The 58 inmates, all at Fort Dodge Correctional Facility. It's the That's the ground zero for pornographic photographs or something in prisons, I don't know. The 58 inmates, all at Fort Dodge Correctional Facility, are suing state officials claiming their constitutional rights have been violated by the pornography ban. I was checking the Constitution just this morning, and I'm looking for it. And I can't find it, but I'll keep looking. I'll endeavor to look. I'm sure some slip and fall lawyer has, or group of lawyers have found that little clause in the pornography clause next to the good and plenty clause, or the supremacy clause, or some freaking thing. I don't know. So the law that came into force on November 14th. So they were right on top of this sucker. Came into effect on November 14th, and boom. I'm sure they probably had the lawsuit all ready to go. And it's a shutdown Now you're not gonna love this. I mean, it's gonna make you, I don't know, shake your head, laugh, sigh, in disgust. I don't know. The law that came into force on November 14th has shut down designated prison rooms in which inmates could read sexually oriented materials. Yes, I'm sure that's what they're doing. They're just reading sexually oriented materials, which is why they're so upset. Yeesh. Previously, inmates, here we go. Previously, inmates had enjoyed checking out publications from the lending library before being escorted to a private reading area. Yeesh. After the inmate had finished with the material, this is like, something that you see and you can't unsee type of thing or whatever. After the inmate had finished with the material, staff would be responsible for inspecting it to check that no pages were missing and no contraband had been inserted. Okay. Prison officials had called the system a staff-intensive process. I'm sure that if you're the staff that had to go through this and do these things, you probably drew the short straw, bro. I mean, that's all I can say. And another thing, not that this would ever happen, but who's responsible for cleaning the private reading rooms after the inmates are completed after inmates have completed reading material? Duh. Anyway, freaking gross is what it is. So inmates are also prohibited from having nude photos in their cells. Of themselves or others, I don't know. The lawsuit brought by 58 inmates was filed in U.S. District Court in Des Moines and seeks to overturn the new state law. The suit claims that the prisoners have been denied a constitutional right and alleges the law has been brought in under the guise of morality. Okay, well, we wouldn't want to do that now, would we? It goes on to blame religious tyrants, yes, of course, who have no regard for the U.S. Constitution or the Declaration. Oh, and now it's the Declaration of it. Who knew Thomas Jefferson was in favor of porn in prisons? Didn't know that. Thanks for cluing us in there, 58 inmates and their slip and fall attorneys. The suit states, now this I think I get. The suit states female correctional officers employed in Iowa's prisons for men should find employment elsewhere if they have a problem handling an environment. Jesus, it's just double entendres. Handling an environment that includes pornographic photographic material. I kind of agree with that. I don't think there's any place for female guards in a men's prison, and I don't think there's any place for male guards in a female prison. It's just it's a recipe for disaster, man. It's also a recipe for blackmail and all sorts of other stuff. It ain't no good for nothing. So they have a point there. So the department really feels, I think I'm being dive bombed or something, I'm not sure. Nope, just a pontoon plane. It's a scout plane, they're scouting me. The black helicopters are going to be coming any minute. Alright, so anyway. So, quote, the department really feels that inmates having access to that kind of material does not lend itself to pro-social thinking and behavior, and as far as our responsibility is to change the mindset of the offender as they transition back into the community, unquote. Michael Savala, the Iowa Prison System's general counsel, told state lawmakers. And so they're working off this assumption, and I've always had a beef with this. I'm not a scientist or a researcher of sex offenders. God. I'm not even going to go down that road. But this assumes that sex offenders can be rehabilitated, and I've got a beef with that. I don't know that maybe some of them can, a few of them can, but I don't think so. Even 20 years later, we have incidences where there was a child sex offender or molester or a rapist or something like that, and they were supposedly over this, and it's 10, 15, 20 years later, and then all of a sudden, boop, they lapse back into it. In my opinion, once a sex offender, always a sex offender. There's just something wrong up here that can't get right, but that's just my opinion. And so that's why I think this whole, it's like the correctional facility bullcrap, where they have prison guards are correctional officers, corrections officers. Who are they correcting? Nobody. They're guarding the prisoners. Prisoners aren't even prisoners anymore. They're inmates. Okay, terrific. Next, they're going to be calling them guests of the facility or something. So, but also, there's a problem with this rehabilitation crap. That rehabilitation is determined technically by recidivism rates, all right? So the problem with using recidivism rates is frankly, it's just wrong. So, for example, if you have 100% of released molesters reoffend, okay? So 100% of these people reoffend, but the rate of reporting is only, say, 12, 15% or whatever it is. And then the rate of incarceration or the rate of conviction is only half of that. Now you're talking 6 to 10% recidivism rate. Well, sorry, but it's a whole lot more than that. I guarantee you. That's not even my opinion. I guarantee it. That's a whole lot more than that. So that's bogus too. Yeah, we'll do a couple more sections, then we'll take another break. The legislation was opposed by Senator Rich Taylor, a retired Iowa State Penitentiary employee. He argued that the changes don't take into consideration that male inmates have a sex drive, and taking away their pornographic material could make things worse. For who? Not for me, not for my children, not for anyone else's children, not for the women out there, whatever. It could make things worse for other inmates in the prison. Okay. Okay. I guess I'll just leave that alone. That is just a fact that you have to have some way to relieve that, yeesh, Taylor said. This gives the inmates no release point except another offender. And don't think that doesn't happen. Of course it happens, you dope. This will make it worse. They will have no other alternatives for their relief. I think that this is a bad idea, Taylor said during a Senate debate on the bill. So on its face, without thinking about it, he has a point, right? But then when you think about it, he kind of doesn't have a point. So we assume that these prisoners, when they're in prison, the sex offenders, they're supposed to be getting treatment, right? They go to support groups with other prisoners, and then they have treatments with a psychologist or a psychiatrist to work on their brain chemistry or their function or whatever the crap it happens to be. So then they go through their treatment for the day or for the week or whatever happens to be, and then they go to their support group and they all talk about their problems and whatnot, and this seems to help, right? And then they leave that and they go check out some pornographic material, go into the ready room, for want of a better term, and have at it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? So that's a bullcrap argument. Sorry. So we're going to take a real quick break. Be right back with more bullcrap. See ya.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist video podcast.
Yeah, baby!
I am back, and again, this is Brent Smith, and you're watching the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. So a spokesman for the Iowa Department of Corrections, Cord Overton, said that inmates were informed in July, of the changes which gave them time to stop subscriptions to sexually explicit. So they actually subscribe to these things? Oh, you gad, man. So they've known since July, so obviously they had this lawsuit of 58 people all ready to go. Ahead of time. I'm still checking the Constitution. I don't see anywhere in there, but I'll where their rights are being violated. But I'll keep you
Okay.
informed. I think that's enough for the prison talk and the pornography talk. It's just gross, and it is what it is. You know, when you're in prison, it just is what it is. So anyway, third and last topic. How did the Republicans lose virtually every congressional race in California after winning almost all of them on election night and even a day after? The day after the elections were over, the Republicans were winning virtually all the contested races, yet a week or two later, they were still counting votes. Gee, what a shocker. And they lost every single election. So we went from like 26 down or 29 down or something like that, a paltry 29 down, to 45 congressmen we lost or something like that because of California. How did that happen? Gee, let me clue you in. Oh, and it's something that Paul Ryan, outgoing Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, actually pointed to. And he's got a point. I don't often agree with Paul Ryan, but on this particular case, he's got a heck of a point. He said, "The California just defies logic to me," Ryan said, about the Golden State's election results. Quote, "We were only down 26 seats the night of the election, and 3 weeks later, we lost basically every California contested race. This election system they have, I can't talk about California, I can't begin to understand what ballot harvesting is," unquote. Well, after I'm done, you'll understand what ballot harvesting is, and it ain't pretty, bro. All right. So he was being interviewed by a Washington Post reporter, Paul Kane, and Paul Kane asked, "Do you think that there's something wrong with it?" And Ryan said, "No, I just think it's weird." So I don't think he knows enough about it to say, yeah, I think that there's something wrong. But once you look into it, there's definitely something wrong. So let's look into it, shall we? The Federalist writes, quote, "In California's 39th Congress," this is just one example, one out of many. "In California's 39th Congressional District, Republican candidate Young Kim was widely anticipated to snag an electoral victory and fill outgoing Representative Ed Royce's shoes, becoming the first Korean-American woman to serve in Congress. On election night," now listen, "on election night and the next day, she held a wide lead ahead of Democrat Gil Cisneros, 57 to 43%. She was leading the day after Election Day, 57 to 43. She actually flew to Washington, D.C. for the orientation for the freshman members of Congress and had the class photo and everything. She had her picture taken with the rest of the class because everybody thought it was a walk. 57 to 43, that's ridiculous. How can you contest something like that? But as ballots continued to pour in up to a week after the election, the results flipped and she ultimately lost," unquote. That was the Federalist. We're going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back with more of the Federalist and more of this. California, man, I got to tell you, we need to just take a chisel, take a whatever, hammer and chisel out all of California and just let it float into the Pacific Ocean, because it's completely gone. It is completely gone. And it's, frankly, that one state may end up ruining all the rest of America. We've already done a pretty good job, but I digress. Let's take a break. Be right back.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist Video Podcast.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
All right, I'm back. And once again, I'm Brent Smith. I'm the Common Constitutionalist. You are viewing the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. and we're talking about California's election system and their voting problems and the voting fraud and everything else. And everybody, all the Democrats say, well, that's just ridiculous. It's a conspiracy theory. Well, dig this. Ready? So what's the problem with in California? And is there one? Well, yeah, there sure as crap is. Here we go. Number one, California's motor voter program. The DMV, dig this, the DMV automatically registers everyone who comes in contact with that particular organization, with that particular division, Department of Motor Vehicles. Minors, too young to vote, they get automatically registered. When you're 16, you can get a license, you automatically get registered to vote. You can't vote till you're 18, but you're registered to vote now because you just received a license because of the motor voter bullcrap. They register felons. They register felons who have obviously lost the right to vote, but they're still registered to vote. Gee, what a shocker. And guess what? The pièce de résistance, yes, they do, because illegal aliens are allowed to drive in California, so they get California driver's license, and so, because of the motor voter laws, they automatically get what? Registered to vote. Illegal aliens in California get registered to vote. Ugh, it's ridiculous. Number two, voters can cast ballots at any polling place while they're only supposed to vote in their own district. So I'm in New Hampshire, and I have a certain district in my city that I have to go vote in. I can't go to the other end of town and vote in my district. I'm not even going to be there. They have this list, this huge list, and they knock it off. You have to show your photo ID, and then they cross your name out or check it off or do whatever they do. So to prove that you are who you are and you have voted. If you go to another district, they're not going to have that list for your district. So you just show up and you hand them your ballot, and that's okay, that's fine there, Juan Valdez or whoever the crap you are. That is not right. Doesn't need to be right. It's California. 3, unlike most other states, absentee ballots cast in California do not need to be delivered by Election Day. They only need to be postmarked by Election Day. So it could be postmarked. It couldn't be. There's no way that they could be fraudulently postmarked. No chance. And then they could be delivered a week or two later and still counted. It's like, what's the point in having rules if there's no rules in California, election rules, because they don't follow them even if they've got the rules. It's ridiculous. 4, in many counties in California, everyone is mailed an absentee ballot, whether you like it or not, whether you want one or not. Now, in most states, almost all states, you have to request an absentee ballot and have a good reason for it to vote absentee. Not in California, they just mail them out en masse. So maybe you can vote absentee and then vote at the polling place. Double voting. Don't know how that works, but whatever. And here's the best. We've saved the best for last. Ballot harvesting. You want to know what ballot harvesting is? It's just despicable is what it is. And this is a law. California made a law that you're allowed to do this crap. It's unbelievable. Ballot harvesting allows political operatives to drop off other people's ballots. So here's what happens. A new state law allows third parties to pick up ballots and drop them off at polling locations on behalf of that person, a practice known as ballot harvesting. So these operatives who work for leftist organizations, I guarantee you, and they have video proof of these operatives, at least one, they have video proof of her knocking on somebody's door saying, hey, I'm going to come take your ballot and I'll drop it off at the polling place, but only if you're voting Democrat. Okay, great. So that's what they do. They show up, they grab your ballot, you offer it to them, kindly and innocently. They take your ballot, and if they see it's a Republican ballot, think that sucker's going to make it to the polling place? Yeah, I don't think so. Me either. And so that's how all these Democrats have won all these contested races after they were losing, in some case soundly, to the Republican a day after the election is over. And that's just, it's wrong, it's fraud, but in California it doesn't seem to make a difference. It's Democrat or bust, and it doesn't really matter. If you're a Republican, you stand almost no chance of being elected or re-elected. It's just ridiculous what the means that they'll go to steal elections. And all the Democrats, oh, they're not stealing. Yes, they are. In California, it's a fact. They're stealing elections. That's the way it is. And that's all I've got for today. My name is Brent Smith. I am the hobbling common constitutionalist. Oh, I'm so sick of this crap. I hate being an invalid. But anyway, I guess I'm getting used to it. People are insisting that I get help, and I'm getting help, and I'm allowing people to help me, put it that way, a little more. I was real pain in the neck the first couple of days. Oh, geez. But it's getting better, and it's feeling a little better and whatnot, but other than that, that's about all I got. So, again, Brent Smith, Common Constitutionalist, signing off. I'll talk at you next week, hopefully video, but one way or the other. Take care. See ya.